Hello everyone, you are welcome back to class. In chapter 3, we are going to read about Aristotle, 384 BC to 322 BC. He lived between. Aristotle, the most distinguished disciple of Plato, is widely known as the tutor of Alexander the Great. So he was a student of Plato and he was teacher of Alexander the Great. Aristotle's enormous contribution to history of thought spans several areas like metaphysics. He talked about metaphysics, he talked about logic, ethics, politics, literary criticism, and various branches of natural sciences, most of which are collected from notes made by his student at the school Aristotle established in Athens Lyceum. He believed to have written nearly half a dozen critical treatises, of which only two are extant: poetics and rhetoric. दो बहुत important है. Poetics dealing with art of poetry and rhetoric dealing with the art of speaking. Aristotle's metaphysics introduces the concept of substance, which comprehends the connection between existence and essence. His studies on logic are based on syllogism and consisting of uh, a major premise conclusion and an answer. So we will talk about poetics now, comprising 26 small chapters. Poetics gives the impression of being a summary of his lectures on his pupils, written either by them or by himself. It is incomplete. Second thing is it is incomplete and mainly concerned with. Okay, I am just marking the keywords you should know about the works. Poetics 26 is small, it is incomplete. With tragedy, which was his day, the most developed form of poetry. Poetics has been analyzed for its study on tragedy, its distinction of tragedy, epic, and its comments on plot and character. These notions of a work of art remain influential to this day, such that literary works are analyzed through such categories as theme, plot, characters, and authorial presence in the text. Aristotle says that epic poetry, tragedy, comedy, dithyrambic poetry, and music are alike in that they all imitate. Okay, like theory of imitation by explained by Plato, we have already seen. They differ in the medium. Okay, so they differ in medium, object, and manner of imitation. But he maintains that good art is neither useless nor dangerous, but natural and beneficial. All right, he talks about good art. And as Plato said, art is dangerous. Aristotle's defense of art, like he attacked Plato, said art is useless. Okay, it does no good to society. Here, Aristotle defense of art. One of the most important feature involved in Aristotle's defense of art is the rejection of Plato's dualism. He rejected Plato's dualism. Plato believed in mind body dualism and emphasized that mind is superior to body. But for Aristotle, man is not an embodied intellect longing for spiritual release of death, but rather an animal with, among all other faculties, an ability to use reason to create. Yet another feature is his rejection of Plato's rationalism. He rejected Plato's dualism. Rejected Plato's rationalism. According to Aristotle, we must study humans as we would study other animals to discover their nature. We should look among the species and see who are they thriving and successful and in what activities do they engage. This is the way to determine what is and is not appropriate for the human and human societies. Along with the rejection of Plato's dualism and rationalism as against sensual knowledge, Aristotle strongly regarded mimesis as having some intellectual element in it and not blind imitation or blind mirroring. Underlying Aristotle's argument in Poetics are the principle of empirical method, uh, acceptance of plurality, and the principle of moderation. To these, we might add the notion of the unity, probability, necessity, rationality, universality, and truth. All these notions, together with Aristotle's ethical and political principles, define his characteristic of good literature. So he talks about good literature, he gives these examples and points. The issues at stake here include the meaning of desirability of realism, presentation of character, use of details, use of language, and the way in which various components of literary work are mutually integrated and harmonized. Art is not useless. Like Plato said, art is useless. Aristotle uh, was against it, and he said art is not useless. According to Aristotle, art is not useless. It is natural for a human being to imitate, since it is an intellectual activity. Any human society which is healthy will be a society where there is imitative art, says Aristotle. In his view, art production and training is a necessary part of any education since it uses and encourages the imaginative manipulation of ideas, as nothing is more natural than for a human being to create using their imagination. Using imagination is good thing according to Aristotle, and according to Plato, it was useless. Since art is imitation, it is imaginative use of concept. Hence, at its heart, art is conceptual and intellectual. Art is not deceptive, like art is to deceive. It was the thought of Plato, but here Aristotle said art is not deceptive. Artist portrays according reality to Aristotle must accurately be successful, that in drama, psychological reality must be accurately portrayed in order for the character to be believable and their action understandable. Also, he says that art teaches effectively and it teaches the truth. For example, drama is convincing and powerful because it reveals the truth of human nature. He introduces the concept of organic unity. So this is again keyword, and this was introduced by Aristotle, which is the idea that any good work of art, each of the parts must contribute to the overall success of the whole. Just as in biological organism, each part contributes to the overall health and well-being of the creature. So too in a good art, good work of art, each element must contribute to the thematic development, and that is called organic unity. This is another way in which a work of art reflects or imitates the reality. Unified action is defined by Aristotle as one that, with its several incidents so closely connected that the transposal or withdrawal of any one of them will disjoin and dislocate the whole. Sensuous art is not a bad thing. So, next part, Aristotle did not believe that the mind was one thing and the body was something else, and therefore Aristotle did not have the bias against physical pleasure that Plato did. The only way of acquiring knowledge at all, according to Aristotle, was through the senses, and so developing, exercising, and sharpening those senses throughout was a healthy thing to do. Art was not solely concerned with the sensual pleasure, but rather was should be an intellectual and conceptual affair. Good art is tied to morality and truth. Okay, so against the morality, like Plato said, art was not against the morality; it can teach morality as well. According to Aristotle, successful tragic drama always teaches morality. He believes that drama imitates not only events but actions. Okay, so according to Aristotle, it was drama was imitating action, such as they imitated intended behavior, psychological forces, and the unseen in a life of person. He willingly set up two functions for a work and art to fulfill, to imitate nature's perceptual details and to imitate nature's organic unity. Aristotle agreed that art did stop negative emotions, but he claimed it then posed these in a harmless, healthy way. This led to the principle of catharsis. So he talked about catharsis already. Catharsis meaning purification in Greek. It is borrowed from medical terminology by Aristotle to explain the function of tragedy. So he was talking about function of tragedy, and he was making a combination with, um, the terms from medical phrase, and he used this word catharsis, which means purification. So what he wanted to purify. He states that the purpose of tragedy is to arouse pity and fear, okay, and thereby affect the catharsis of these emotions. Means first it arouses the sense of pity and fear, and then it is a function of tragedy that it will have to purify these emotions. The interpretation generally accepted is that through experiencing fear vicariously in a controlled situation, the spectator's own anxieties are directed outward, and through sympathetic identification with the tragic hero, his insight and outlook are enlarged. Tragedy then has a healthy and humanizing effect on a spectator or the reader. Aristotle's observation on tragedy. Poetry, being imitative art, can imitate two kinds of actions: the noble actions of good men and the mean actions of bad men. From the former was born the epic, and from a later the satire. Okay, there are two kinds. If we are uh, imitating action of good men, it will become an epic. Okay, just related to good men. We are imitating good men's behavior or his noble actions, and if we are going for mean actions of bad men, it will become satire. From these in turns arouse tragedy and comedy. Tragedy bears the same relation to the epic as comedy to the satire, but he always you know consider tragedy superior. It follows therefore that the epic and tragedy are superior to the sea. Epic and tragedy are superior to the satire and comedy. So you should remember this key line, with which concern themselves with the mean action of low men. Tragedy is superior to the epic, as it has all the epic elements in a shorter compass, with moreover music and spectacular effect which the epic does not have, and being more compact in design. Aristotle's definition of tragedy. Tragedy, says Aristotle, is an imitation of an action that is serious, complete, and of certain magnitude. In language embellished with each kind of artistic ornament, the several kinds being found in separate parts of the play in the form of action, not narrative, through pity and fear affecting the proper purgation of these emotions. Six constituent elements Aristotle described. Aristotle finds six constituent parts of tragedy. What are those? Plot, character, thoughts, diction, song, and spectacle. Plot, or the arrangement of the incident, is the chief part of the tragedy, soul of tragedy. And this is asked like, which is the soul of tragedy? So it is plot. Action ensues from character, which molded by thought, and which reveals itself in dialogues, in diction, language embellished with ornaments such as song, especially spectacle, stage presentation, which is least connected with poetry, adds to the power of tragedy. Three unities, as we saw earlier. We talked about three unities. Plot being the soul of tragedy, the artistic arrangement of its incidents is of the prime importance. It should have unity of action. So, what is unity of action? Or only those actions intimately connected with one another and appears together as one whole. ओके सो जो एक्शन है यूनिटी ऑफ एक्शन है वो सारा का सारा जो प्लॉट होना चाहिए उसमें जो एक्शन होना चाहिए वो होल होना चाहिए and usually action concern one man. Aristotle mentioned the unity of time as well, casually and once only once, which is the conformity between the time taken by the events of the play that taken in the representation of the stage. Third thing he talked about unity of place. उन्होंने चीज तीसरी चीज बात की unity of place के बारे में. For a good tragic plot to arouse the emotions of pity and fear in the spectator and or the reader, there are two ways in which these emotions may be aroused. Spectator Spectacular means such as physical torture, piteous lamentation, beggarly appearance, like in Tamburlaine. The inner structure of the plot, such as a brother unknowingly killing a brother and discovering the fact later, on intending good and doing evil, etc. It is later mode that indicates superior point. Simple and complex plots. There are two types of plots. First is simple plot. Second is complex plot. In a simple plot, there are no puzzling situation, particularly that enter into complex plot. In peripecia, here second term for you to remember, peripecia, reversal of fortune and anagnorosis. Anagnorosis is called discovery. The two parts of plot, complication and denouement. So what is complication? Tying the knot, and denouement is untying the knot. So these are the keyword you should know. Tragic hero, and what were the ideas about tragic hero by Aristotle? The tragic hero should be a character of noble stature having high position in the society. He must be a man who is not eminently good or just, yet whose misfortune is brought into about not by vice or depravity, but by some error or frailty. Hamartia. So error or frailty is he used the word term. Here we use the term hamartia or error in judgment. Okay, so these are the terms you should know. Uh, Hopefully you have noted down all these. For Aristotle, character is what determines moral choice. He even classifies genres using this principle. Tragedy imitates noble character, okay, spout diosis, and comedy imitates base character. Tragedy as superior to epic. Like if we will make, you know, a line like tragedy, then epic, and then he comes for comedy. All right. For Aristotle, tragedy appeals to more refined audience and unfolds its action with narrower limits. Its limited length attains greater unity, and its concentrated effect is more pleasurable than one which is spread over a long time and so dilated. While Plato's approach to literature was that of a social reformer, Aristotle's is that of a scientist. Plato wanted literature to do work of morality. Aristotle expects it to be no more than what it is, an art. So Aristotle sees literature as an art, but Plato wants to, give a next duty to teach morality. Mimesis. Now, what was his idea of mimesis, imitation? The first recorded use of mimesis, an aesthetic term, is Plato's in poetry. It is a derogatory term for describing the poet's counterfeit creations. Okay, mimesis was a derogatory term given to poets. Okay, which reflects and mimic the transient appearance of this world. The concept of imitation is central to as Aristotelian logic, even as it is to the Platonic. But the Aristotelic imitation an essential difference. What was the difference between that? Aristotelian logic combines a sense of literary work as a representation of some pre-existent reality with a sense of the work itself and as an object, not merely reflecting surface. The poet is not subservient to the rationality of the actual, the play or poem has its own natural form or an objective status. In the poetics, tragedy is like an organism. It grows, achieves its prime and decays. The poet imitates best by allowing the work to achieve its own fitting formal excellence. So, the value of Aristotle criticism. Aristotle's approach to literature is that of a scientist. Aristotle wanted literature to be an art, not to do the work of morality. He points the difference between politics and poetry. Politics is a social science, therefore it should be judged by the contribution it makes to social well-being. Poetry, on the other hand, should be judged by its capacity to please the audience. Okay, he judges literature by aesthetic standard alone, not morality. Unlike Plato, he does not regard poetry as twice removed from reality. He was, just opposite to it. He considers the representation in poetry as true to the facts of human life. He points out its capacity to see the permanent features of life. He suggests what kind of plot, character, and style will interest spectators. He finds that peripecia and anagnorisis are the most interesting elements in the tragic plot, hamartia in the tragic hero, and metaphor in style. Tragedy, comedy, epic are all in this way considered with reference to the effect on the minds and hearts of their spectators. Poetics deals with the art of poetry and many more problems of literature and has therefore attracted greater attention than any other work of criticism. So, see you in next video. Till then, goodbye. Take care.